Hello. Let me just verify that I am live and recording. Okay, perfect. Okay, so as promised, today I'm going to go over the major arcana. Now, what I did was make like a little presentation slide just to make it a little easier. Um, and hopefully I can finish the full 22 cards in an hour because I only gave myself an hour today because I also want to go ahead and have the first book club meeting. So if you have been reading How to Be a Psychic, that's going to follow directly at 4 p.m. my time. So let's go ahead and get into the major arcana. I did verify that I'm recording. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. And I believe let's see. I may have to open another window real quick. Went outside today and my nose was running, so I'm like, okay, now my allergies are kind of no, it's not. Yeah, my allergies are a little worked up, so I'm like, uh-oh. I logged into the wrong thing. Oh goodness. Okay. Okay. Try this again. Let me log into the correct account. And then I can present what I designed for us. Present. How do I do this? Okay. Oops. So I guess I have to share my whole screen, and that's fine. Let me just go back. Hey, hello, hello. Greetings, my love. If you click the link from the broadcast, if you click the link, you can join and we can chat face to face. And if you don't want to be on camera, that's fine also. But that will allow you to log in like through Facebook, so that I can recognize who I'm talking to while I'm on here. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into the presenters mode. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see. I don't know why it's giving me such a hard time. Let me try again. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my whole presentation mode, right? So let me make sure you guys can see this and not me. Sorry, this is so confusing. Not confusing, but I can't remove myself because then you won't see me. Okay, there we go. Okay, boom, bam. Let's get back. Okay, I'm gonna peek on my phone just to make sure it's showing up correctly because I'm gonna be real irritated if it doesn't show right. Let me get some tissue also. Now my nose is now one thing is another. Okay, perfect. All right, so the major arcana. The major arcana is the beginning of the tarot. Right, it's the first 22 cards of the tarot. Um, I won't get into like the history of tarot or anything, but it is the spiritual energy, right? The energy that humans don't have control over. It's indicative of a higher power, a bigger power, a grander power. The tarot is also called the Fool's Journey, as it starts with card 0, the Fool. And then it sort of tells a story of the way one masters each of these skills and energy. Sorry, I'm like wiping my nose at the same time. That's why I sound so crazy. But yeah, it tells a story of the Fool's Journey, mastering each of the elements. So I look at the spiritual element as the entire arcana, major arcana. And then the minor arcana, of course, has the earth, wind, air. Wait, what did I say? Earth, water, air, and fire. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. Okay, so we're starting with, so what is the major arcana? The universal archetypal energies that govern life. So again, these higher powers, this represents the 22 cards of the 78 card deck. It's also said to represent the greater natural forces affecting the situation. So again, the higher powers, the spiritual meanings behind things. I don't know why that blank spread is there, but boom, here we are. Maybe I was going to put something on there. Starting with the Fool, a few keywords for the Fool are beginnings, innocence, clear conscience. And this is just the Fool upright. We won't get into the reversal meanings just yet. But the Fool card is number 0. It is a fresh, clean slate. Here's 3 different versions of the Fool card that you can see. The one in the middle is most close to the traditional Rider-Waite Fool card. And I was gonna pull mine out, but I feel like this is enough. It's cool to see different versions of the Fool card as well. So the Fool card is air energy. The ruler of this card is Uranus. And again, it represents beginnings, innocence, and having a clear conscience, like a brand new start, a fresh beginning. And kind of like just being open, not really looking for anything in particular, just being open, and also looking for change and looking forward towards things being different. That's very Uranian. So when the Fool card comes up, it just represents harnessing that power constructively, being open. It represents like a pure spirit, just an open-heartedness and open-mindedness. And just looking forward to what's going to be ahead. But also it can be like naive to an extent. So obviously there's a need for discernment, but that's some general meanings of what the Fool card represents. The next card is the Magician. A few keywords. Oh my goodness, Mercury retrograde, and I just cannot say words for nothing. Anyway, the Magician. A few keywords are power, adroitness, construction. Now I'm going to be honest. I'm not 100% sure what adroitness means. But it feels like accuracy. The Magician can also be looked at like an alchemist. It's earth or air energy. Again, he has all of the elements. If you see, he has the traditional cups representing the water, the dagger representing swords or air, the pentagram representing pentacles or earth, and then the wand, the stick here, representing fire. So he has all of the elements here. And it just represents using all of the tools at your disposal to create whatever outcome you want. I don't know who this is calling me. Anyway, but this is another cool version of the Magician card, very sleek. But again, it has the cup, the dagger, the swords, the wands, and I guess this would be the pentacle in this particular deck. Very different, very cool. Again, keywords: power, construction, creating change. It's like working with what you have. It's manifesting power, specifically power of the mind. It can also represent people who are strong spiritually and have a strong character. And again, it represents individuality, and this card is ruled by Mercury. Okay, let's move on. So, yeah, it's very cerebral, having control over your mind and being able to, when you think like telekinesis, being able to control your environment and control the outcome of things and manifest your desires is all very mental. So, that's the Magician. Okay, the next card is the High Priestess. So the next card, I'm like, I don't know why I'm getting so many notifications right now. So excuse me. The High Priestess keywords are intuition, clairvoyance, premonition, and perceptivity. As we can see, there's three different cards that represent the High Priestess. The card on the left has a crystal ball, and then this one has the scrolls, which kind of represent secrets or being all knowing or having higher understanding or higher consciousness. This card is of the water element. It's ruled by the moon. Again, intuition, clairvoyance, premonition, perceptivity are some keywords that belong to the High Priestess, especially in the upright. So this can represent the unconscious knowing, the connection to the collective consciousness or the collective unconsciousness, the subconscious, spirituality, psychic energy, intuition. It can represent deep emotions or deep feelings, things that are very deep, such as the subconscious, And then on her scroll, it reads the word Torah. And it says here, the scroll indicates the body of law that governs the spiritual and physical universe. And not unlike the concept of Dharma depicted in the traditional Wheel of Fortune, number 10 card. Anyway, that's a little bit about the High Priestess in the upright. Okay, the third card is the Empress, representing divine feminine energy. It's ruled by Venus. It's earth energy. Some keywords for the Empress are fertility, creativity, maternity. Think fruitfulness. It represents creativity and creative energy. It's things that come to fruition. I always say that wrong. Anyway, it's the realization of creative projects. So it's like when something actualizes, it's the birth of something. It can also represent material abundance and wealth, as well as like literal birth, like the birth of a child. The Empress is one of those cards that can tend to be very vast in its meaning, and it can represent blessings of all kind. If you think Venus, things that just feel good and are beautiful and expand our relationships within ourselves and with each other and with spirit, it can represent any of those things. It represents beauty, sensuality, femininity, and feminine power. Again, the divine feminine energy. The next card is the Emperor, number 4. And this card is kind of like the counterpart to the Empress. It's the divine masculine energy. A few keywords for the Emperor are authority, government, and paternity. So if the Empress is maternity, the Emperor is paternity. And you see he has an Ankh in his hand. He does in the traditional Rider-Waite tarot as well, but it doesn't look as obviously like an Ankh as this one does. Anyway, this card is a fire card. It's ruled by Mars and Aries. So it can be very headstrong. But this is going to be representing the high vibrational or the evolved state of Mars and Aries. So in the upright anyway. The Emperor represents authority and government, and it represents like having things under control, being in control, being a leader, being very stern. Um, it's also like knowing when to attack and it's like very calm, like always ready, but not going there until it's absolutely necessary, if that makes sense. And I love that all three of these cards. Well, this one has the Ankh, and then this one has the Mars with the crowns. I mean, it's simple, but it still gives you like some hints. That's what I mean. Some hints to the card's meaning. This one is probably a little bit trickier, actually. Just looking at it, it's a nice design, but do I think the Emperor? No. Anywho, so yeah, it represents masculine energy, dominance, career and business realms. It can represent like authoritarianism, especially in the reverse, but it represents authority, like having some type of authority, being the head of something. It can appear in themes of order, authority and jurisdiction, control, governments, or entrepreneurship. Oh my gosh, that's such a hard word to say. I don't even have my teeth on or anything. Anyway, things of that nature. It can also come up as like representing the person who is the head of the household or the head of a business who has to make a lot of decisions and act on certain things, like who at the end of the day is like the playmaker, the shot caller. So those are some keywords for the Emperor. The next card is the Hierophant. The Hierophant is earth energy. It's associated with Venus and Taurus. I always say Taurus. Traditionally, that's what that's how I learned Taurus. This card is associated with tradition, conventionalism, and institutionalism. So think churches, think schools, indoctrination, even. You could, I mean, what? Maybe not. Maybe not. Anywho, I don't want to confuse you. The Hierophant can suggest conformity. So again, conforming to one's beliefs or tradition, like doing things the way things have always been done because that's just how things have been done. So whereas the Fool is, oh my goodness, us. I don't even know how it snuck in here. A fly just snuck in through the screen on my window and everything. Anyway, whereas like the Fool is unconventionality and being different, the Hierophant is not, right? And this middle Hierophant looks really kind of creepy. I never even noticed his face at first, but he looks very judgmental and angry. And they even look a little bit nervous, like, ooh, you don't want to piss this guy off. Anyway, this card can suggest good intention to protect, but a negative result from those good intentions because a person should never assume that he or she knows better than another and therefore try to protect or shield someone from knowledge. We are not the keeper of others. So this is like like the Hierophants, it's like the purpose is to protect your innocence. And this card can be looked at as like a mentor or a guide or someone you go to for advice or someone you view as wise, such as like a priest or a counselor or an older parent, a grandparent. But sometimes, they can push their beliefs on you. So that's kind of the lines the Hierophant skates on. So it is kind of pushing for conformity and kind of like doing what's best for everybody instead of what's best for you. So sometimes it can be flat out bad advice. But the Hierophant can represent, again, tradition, conventionalism. This is another card that can tend to come up in marriage. It is the number 5. So you also want to take into consideration numerology. I think that's what was supposed to go on that blank slide. But we can definitely do this again because this is it's just gonna take time. Talking about it is nothing. But anyway, the yeah, the Hierophant is one of those cards that can come up in marriage readings or marriage readings that have to do with family things or yeah, things of that nature. It can come up in those types of readings. And again, the number 5 is indicative of change. So it can come up like when it's time for you to change a certain pattern. Um, and there could be others in your circle pushing for you to uphold some type of tradition. So discernment is always good. And then reading the cards that come up around certain spreads, depending on your question, definitely matters. Okay. All right, so the next card is the Lovers, the Major Arcana. This card is ruled by Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. Well, it's associated with Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. It is air. It's an air card. This card represents passion, partnership, ethics, and primordial choice. It represents decisions. It can also represent contracts, official matters, doing things that represent longevity and the good of all, but considering yourself as well, that bring balance. It's a card that comes up for love, especially, I mean, it's the Lovers. It can come up for relationship spreads. It can also come up for business spreads where contracts are involved. Or just traditional relationships of all kinds that are balancing, right? It's the opposite of instant gratification. Goodness, I don't know why that was so far from me, but anyway. Whereas, like with the Devil card, you might want some instant gratification, or one of the Court cards, maybe. The Lovers is like willing to do things in a slow, balanced way, even though that's not really Gemini, if you ask me. But anyway, it's a card of ethics. It represents moral choices, choosing the right path for the long run, doing what's best in the long run, indicating the beginning of some type of romance or beginnings of some type of partnership, official partnerships. It can also represent passion and romantic love. It can represent like a strong feeling of some type of paradise, or at least the beginning of such. It can come up again in work partnership, in work readings, indicating a partnership that is going to be kind of like a match made in heaven. Like it's very balanced and you work well together, you complement one another. So it's a very good card, especially when it comes up in the upright. Okay, the next card is the Chariot. This card kind of looks a little like it doesn't look like the meaning as good as it truly is. But anyway, the Chariot, excuse me. The Chariot is number 7 card. It's a water card and it's associated with Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Some keywords are victory, control, willpower, and jurisdiction. Definitely willpower. This is a card that represents overcoming obstacles, gaining some type of momentum. It's a conquest and triumph over obstacles. It's suggesting that you're seeking control over your emotional faculties. So like channeling your emotions to help you get over challenging circumstances or obstacles of all kinds, especially emotional barriers. It's a master. You're trying to master. It can come up if you're trying to master like self-control or self-assertion. It can indicate great control over one's willpower. And it can also represent like gaining momentum. The Chariot is about putting into action the body and mind, knowledge and intuition. It represents the seeker's personality and tenacity and the movement towards accomplishing a goal. So it's a good sign. It's a very good thing if it comes up in a spread, especially if it represents you. It's not good if it comes up to represent somebody who means malice. You know what I mean? This just represents that they're tenacious and they're willing to overcome any obstacles that come up in their way. But if it's you, it just gives that like go getter mentality. And it's like, even if you're hurt or not hurt, but like, even if things don't really go your way or you're not 100% motivated, even though this card can represent motivation, it's like you're able to channel your emotions into drive into your and you're allowing everything that happens to motivate you to keep going. You know what I mean? So that's a good card. It has a good meaning, and it can represent like this force that nothing can really stop you on your journey. So it's some good stuff. It's some good stuff. So the next card is the strength card, number 8. This card is associated with Leo, which is ruled by the sun. This is fire. Keywords are compassion, force, fortitude, and security. So, sorry. Keywords are compassion, force, fortitude, and security. I don't want to do that. Sorry. All right. So the strength card here, the card in the middle is closest to the traditional card. This card is choosing love over hate, compassion and strength is what it says. Beneficent fortitude. It's knowing that strength is a virtue. Virtue is strength. Triumph over one's higher nature over material desires. Strength is a card of domination over your fears. It's like embracing your inner beast. Knowing the power that you're capable of. It's also a card that's associated with willpower, like your physical strength, your vitality, but just like your general like willpower strength, that type of strength also. It's a reminder that you can't use brute force to exercise will over others. So like if you see how one card accelerates over the next, it's like that next lesson. Because if you look at everything like a spectrum, it's like if you go back to the Chariot card, and it's like you just bulldozing over things. If you overdo that and you exceed the balanced nature of this energy, then the next lesson you learn is that strength, like your strength can be a blessing or a curse. So knowing when to use the right amount of force is kind of like the lesson with the strength card. Knowing how to master your strength so that you have control over yourself and over your willpower. And it's also just like knowing when or when not to emotionally react and how to respond to things and which amount of force is appropriate based on the circumstances, pretty much. Okay. The next card is Hermit. The Hermit card, number 9. This card is associated with Virgo. Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, it's an earth card. Some keywords are wisdom, erudition. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be adding cards. I shouldn't be adding words that I don't know what they mean. Anyway, it can also be like mentorship. This card, honestly, it's a card of wisdom for sure. It's like wisdom of self. And honestly, that's how you truly gain wisdom to everything around you, by learning who you are and learning more about your history and your genetic makeup, your astrological makeup, like all of your different um, DNA breakdowns, essentially. Understanding yourself helps you understand your experiences, the people around you, etc. So the Hermit card can be looked at like truly being like a hermit and just like doing some soul searching, but not just like hiding away from everybody just to be alone because you're a prude, but really just spending time like in meditation in solitude. It can also just represent you guiding someone else, providing some type of mentorship. This can be someone who's offering some type of counsel or seeking counsel. This can represent seeking advice from somebody who's wiser than you. Also, someone such as a prophet. It can represent introspection in most cases, like deep introspection, really like that soul searching energy, like going deep within and learning more about who you are and being very meticulous about the way in which you are introspective, like Virgo would be. It can indicate someone such as like an introvert who is embracing solitude, like turning your focus and attention inward, and gaining wisdom through such as things such as meditation, or reading, philosophy, things like that. But it represents gaining wisdom through introspection in so many words. All right, the next card is the Wheel of Fortune, number 10, indicative of endings and new beginnings, being a number 10. Destiny and serendipity, some type of turning point, also divine timing. It's a fire card, it's ruled by Jupiter. This card is a card of karma. It represents some type of turning point or movement coming. Um, it can represent something that's unavoidable, like some sort of act of God or like literal divine intervention. It can represent something that affects the outcome of certain events. Fate, destiny, kismet. I don't know what that means, but I guess it's like probably a synonym for fate or destiny. It just represents that things are going like afloat according to plan. Like this is all supposed to be happening, kind of, sort of like like this is all a part of this divine journey. It suggests that things are in flow of the universal way, if that makes sense. Okay. So that's the Wheel of Fortune. And I mean it's Jupiter, so it's a card of luck. It's a very benevolent card. It means good things when it comes up. Okay. Next card, number 11, Justice. Libra energy, air. Libra is ruled by Venus. This card represents equilibrium, equity, fairness, and legality. This is the season that we're in, so this is why I was saying that people will be fighting for justice and balance, whatever they believe that is, whether it truly is or not, because perception is reality. If you haven't honestly weighed out the odds and objectively, then what's balanced for you may not actually be balanced for you. It just may be what you keep telling yourself is. It may not be balanced for others either. But anyway, I digress. This card can represent external balance. Excuse me. So it's like the previous card comes in to assist with things being in flow and going according to plan and like timeline purposes, quote unquote timeline purposes, because time is not linear. It just helps things go within the flow towards the general ascension path, right? So justice is a card that comes up to keep things balanced on the external side. Excuse me. So this card can represent that it can represent cause and effect. So the outcome that will bring balance into the person's life, that this card comes up for. This just represents the equilibrium or the judgment, how that situation plays out. So again, it's just fairness. It's detached impartiality, critical influences or factors in the current situation. So it's just like being unbiased, being objective, weighing out the options, weighing out the odds, weighing out the cause and effect and the circumstances, and then making a balanced and fair decision. That's what this card is about. And usually comes up when it's time to make an important decision or when a decision has already been made. It's just letting you know this was the fair decision. So it can represent or symbolize a separation of states of consciousness. All right, so that's just a little bit about the Justice card. Hopefully, this is helpful. All right, next card, number 12, the Hanged Man or the Hanged One in some decks. The water, it's water energy. This card is associated with Neptune. This card is about self-sacrifice, suspension, prophecy, and grace. As you can see, he's dangling from a tree by his foot, and then he has this halo glow around his head, in the middle card at least, which is closest to the traditional Rider-Waite tarot. And this one kind of looks like a chart, except it would be more than 12 houses. But anyway, again, it can represent prophecy, that Neptune energy. So this could be self-sacrifice of some sort. And that just varies. That could be a very, very vast meaning. It represents enlightenment, possessing knowledge that resonates with the divine, with the right, and with the good. So this is a card that represents seeing through a different perspective, a higher perspective. It can also mean that you need to wait, or it's like it can be like a spiritual pause. Sometimes it's called a spiritual pause in the tarot community. Like you're not just hanging around waiting. You can make yourself useful in other ways, but the enlightenment will come. It's like when spirit needs to communicate with you, and any prophetic moments will come to you. So this card can mean to sacrifice yourself from the situation. Like don't involve yourself in the physical until you get clear direction and guidance from your higher self on which way to go, or how to move, if that makes sense. The Hierophant is, I'm sorry, this one is this part is talking about the Hierophant. That's not what I meant to read. It's about seeing the same issues as others, but through a different perspective, which is very Neptunian. So again, this is a card that represents like you being guided by a higher power. It can also just be about like connecting and tapping into the masses. The Hangman can also indicate spiritual growth or an innate ability to prophecy. So if this comes up, it can come up, especially in like a spiritual gifts reading or something like that. It can represent like a very prophetic vision or insight or guidance coming to you. And it just kind of feels like with stillness, and it's like with stillness, not chasing something, it comes to you. It just comes to you. I hope that makes sense. All right. The next card is the Death card. Number 13. This card is associated with Scorpio, which traditionally is ruled by Mars and Pluto. And yes, Pluto, I'm sorry. Yes, Scorpio is a water sign. But this card is a card of transformation, mortality, and suffering. It can represent suffering. And that's not so much in a just like excruciating way, just like change is uncomfortable. So there could be some growing pains associated with change. But also when you think about a rebirth, there's loss associated with death. Even if it's not like someone like a physical loved one passing, if there's a part of you that dies, there's mourning that is associated with that. So that kind of suffering. This card, again, is transformation and metamorphosis. It's transformation and passage from lower to higher. And that is not always, it's not fun. You know what I mean? It's not something that feels good. It can be kind of difficult. It can be kind of tough. So this card depicts the end of a phase or stage in the seeker's life and the beginning of a new one. It's all about change. It assuages the tendency in human nature to resist change. Change is generally uncomfortable, like I just mentioned. The transformation process will be painful, but it will be one of the harder moments. Yeah, it will be one of the harder moments of the seeker's life, but endure and persevere a bright new era will be up ahead. It also indicates, it can also indicate the overthrow of a former authoritarian regimen or regime and the natural cycle of revolution. It suggests the waning power of one authority and the growing power, ascending power of a new. It is the card of revolutions. So it is a good thing. It's just not very fun right now when this card comes up. Okay. All right. Next card is Temperance. This is one of my favorite cards of the deck. It's a fire card. It's ruled by Jupiter. Well, it's a Sagittarius card, which is ruled by Jupiter. This card comes in for balance, forbearance, attunement. It's another card that's kind of indicative of like divine intervention a little bit. It represents harmony and tranquility, serendipity in some cases also. It's a card, it's a healing card. It can denote greater external forces or universal forces entering our individual lives to right what is wrong and restore what was lost, to bring balance, to bring healing on a deep spiritual and emotional level, especially if after a deep loss such as death. Then comes in Temperance. It's so beautiful, right? To heat what was cold and temper our lives for balance, harmonious health. It's about internal balance. Justice is about external balance. So Temperance is about internal balance. Understand the higher purpose of something. Again, that deep spiritual balance, having that balance, your spiritual and emotional bodies and understanding is fed and fulfilled with the Temperance card. It says the seeker needs to reconcile two contrasting elements and bring them into harmony. Temperance and balance are the keys to resolving the matter at hand. It's also, it can come up during difficult times when there's a need for great cooperation and tempering extreme emotions such as anger, resentment, hostility, or sexuality. It can also be like, in some cases, it can be like mental instability or emotional instability, rage even. So Temperance is one of those cards that can come up to help create balance in those situations. And so again, it can be uncomfortable, but it can also be very beautiful as well because it represents the healing is coming. It's kind of like you have no choice but to heal after you reach a certain point. It's like the point of no return. There's this only way to go from here is healing. I hope that makes sense. All right. I shouldn't have drank that orange juice because it keeps making me burp. The next card is the Devil. The Devil card is number 15, Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, Earth energy. This card can represent bondage, temptation, and seduction. It can also represent addiction. It can represent that, like how human nature can prevail over spirituality, how temptation can cause limitations on capability, achievement, and personal growth. It's about bondage to the material and superficial. Perseverance for instant gratification over delayed gratification, such as like the Lovers. So these cards kind of contrast, in my mind anyway. You may not view it that way, but that's how I view these cards. Like this would be the healthy spectrum. I mean, this would be the unhealthy spectrum of love and or the unhealthy side of the spectrum of love. And the Lovers would be the healthy or like the balanced love, right? So this can represent, again, temptations that make you want to choose the material over the spiritual. Whatever it is that you could be addicted to. It can come up for alcoholics, people who have gambling addictions, sexual addictions, drug addictions of all kinds, especially If oh dang, what card was that? Like maybe like the Hangman could come up, or some other type of Piscean or Neptunian energy, alluding to like escapism. Anyway, the devil can represent the worship of false idols. So whatever it is that you feel like is good for you, but actually is not, um, the temptation is not to be the most dignified version of this person, himself or herself. You have to overcome this. This card is a warning that there are negative influences preventing the seeker from attaining his or her goals. The seeker must break free from the bondage. It's like something has you stuck. It's preventing you from growth. It's keeping you at this plateau. And you may even tell yourself that it's okay to be here, but it's not. It just represents an unhealthy relationship that you have. It can represent that you got to work harder to overcome your inner demons. Um, yeah, and not given to temptation. Okay, that's the devil card. The Tower. Oh, the Tower. This is a card of fire. It's ruled by Mars. Keywords are sudden fall, ego, hubris, and catastrophe. This can represent some type of downfall due to one's own selfish or egotistical ambition. This is like when you ignore the red flags and you keep going, and it's like you know that your foundation isn't level, but you keep building, the tower falls, right? This is when the tower comes up. And it's always when you refuse to see the signs that are like clear as day most times, right? Um, it will probably undermine or uproot your security or sense of stability. There are new revelations though after this jolt. Like it can bring in lots of epiphanies and you can see things that you never saw before. The aftermath is truth. Like you can see, it's like it's undeniable. Um, it's undeniable. It's made undeniable, so that you can no longer lie to yourself. And to choose to lie to yourself after the tower comes up is just pure denial, right? So this gold lightning rod suggests that there will be a sudden epiphany, realization, or significant spiritual growth through this period in the seeker's life. The falling crown symbolizes toppling materialism, thwarted materialistic ambitions. The tower suggests an epiphany or realization that leads to rebuilding or reconstruction. And now you know what not to do. It can appear in readings for the cutthroat ambitious, for people who embody the combination of ambition, ego, pride, and talent. When you overlook certain things or you choose to do things in a very imbalanced way, this is when it comes back to bite you in the ass. Just when you thought that you got away with everything and you had succeeded, Spirit comes to balance everything out and make a big spectacle out of this lesson so that there's no denying what the lesson is or who it's for. It can also come up for individuals who are incredibly capable, highly intelligent, and fully aware of their capabilities and high intelligence. However, they have been cut down to a profound low point, and they don't understand how they could deserve such belittlement. The Tower card can appear in readings for the seeker because it's a warning that the ascent to the top must be paired with spiritual understanding and humility. Otherwise, the ascent will end with a crash downward. So, yes, this does often come up in warning readings to let you know that if you don't move accordingly and you're not smart and you're not balanced and you're not paying attention to the spiritual signs and your spiritual awareness is off, that things can all come crashing down in a very tragic way at some point. So just be mindful, very discerning at all times. And this represents a suddenness also. It's Mars, it's quick, right? You may or may not see it coming. Okay, the Star card. Another one of my favorite cards, the star card number 17. It's Aquarius energy, which is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. It's air. Keywords are hope, optimism, inspiration, and visionary. It's a card of healing as well. It represents hope, inspiration, and mental health. It can represent opportunities that help to restore the hope. It exemplifies the abundance of happiness, harmony, beauty, hope, peace. It also represents individuality, originality, those Aquarian features. The star card is a good omen for contentment. If you're a writer, philosopher, researcher, or an academic, the star card is particularly optimistic. It can suggest that a person will be contributing significantly and leaving behind a great legacy um, that touches a lot of people and probably helps a lot of other people heal. Um, you can be prepared for a bright, hopeful future ahead, excuse me. It suggests renewal and restoration of hope. It's a card of rejuvenation, again, healing. The star personalities master the balance between intelligence and love. It can also represent someone who's like a spiritual counselor who shares his or her spirituality with others to restore hope and inspire others. This card can also just represent inspiration in general and inspiration through authenticity. And I think that's kind of like what I strive. Not necessarily something that I literally strive for, but it's something that is a hope of mine because I love just being authentic because I don't have to be gimmicky or try to be something else. So to know that it's inspirational or helps other people heal is a great sign. So I think that's why I love and resonate with this card. Um, there's a sense that the star was a source for the charioteer's divine empowerment. So it speaks to how the cards kind of communicate with one another and how they draw on each other's energy. The next card is the moon card. It's a water card, Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. It's a card of reflection, changes, and imagination. The moon card can also be associated with one's dreams, speculation as well. It's inner self. The reflection of the inner self is emerging with this card. It represents the shadow of the self, the unconscious mind, repressed weaknesses. It can also represent repressed fears, um, being scared to make some type of decision or look at something. It can suggest the accumulated repressions are now causing the seeker's shadow to surface and affect the self conscious. Facets have been repressed or are latent in the seeker and are now emerging and influences the present consciousness. So it's like repressed emotions and fears that you haven't dealt with. You can start projecting them into your current situations, and you could be making fear-based decisions based on old things that you haven't dealt with, old emotions, old fears, things of that nature. It can also be indicative of deep emotions, similar to the High Priestess, which but this one it would be like deep fearful emotions or deep negative emotions. So this can come up to represent like your dreams when things have been so repressed that you end up having dreams about them. With this card, it says the intuition is strong. The moon is constant change, duality, and dichotomy. There can be many secrets, well, maybe not many, but there are secrets. Like the high priestess can represent personal mystery. The moon can represent physical mystery. So the moon could be like hiding things. The high priestess could just be like a person is withholding some type of knowing for something. The moon card can represent secrets of the natural world, the hidden condition of the secret situation that will reveal itself in time. It can represent poetry and mysterious mystery. Sorry, I don't know what I was about to say. It suggests that the seeker with hidden abilities to harness both tame elements and wild elements. It's about latent abilities and revelation to the inner self. So it's like it's like this fear is just ignorance to the unknown. And in order to tap into these gifts, you have to like face those fears. You have to do like that shadow work. And then you realize you have all of these abilities and there's nothing to be afraid of at all. So let's see if I can get through these last three cards as quickly as possible so that I can start the next um, session for the how to be a psychic book club meeting. Hopefully we get some people in there too. Hopefully y'all are reading this book. It's a really easy read. Lots of cool information in there. Anyway, so this is a fire card. It's ruled by the sun. So it has some Leo energy. This is a card that tends to come up for me with like inner child stuff. That's just one of my my key things as a reader. Some keywords are attainment, glory, majesty, celebrity, and eminence. This is a card of success, glory, attainment, and accomplishment. In particular, it can represent joy, recognition, applause, and accolades. It can indicate good marriages or successful relationships to a spouse. It can come up for like a power couple or success for work or career reading. It can represent some type of high achievement of some sort. But since it's the sun, it just for me it's like general self-expression. Like your self-expression is accepted. It represents liberation from a former state of toil. Blooming sunflowers represents the spiritual attunement and the glory under auspices of heavens. You not only are you successful, but the success is supported by spiritual righteousness. And then you have like this public gain as well. There could be some type of celebrity or fame involved when this card comes up, or at the very least, popularity. It comes up for readings for those in creative fields who are bound for great accomplishment and wide recognition. It can represent some type of dominance or captivating the attention and respect of others, but like creative dominance, not in a detrimental way. All right. The next card is the Judgment card. This card is fire or water. It's ruled by Pluto. This card represents awakening, epiphany, spiritual realization, and rebirth. So it's all about spiritual awakening and epiphany. It's about salvation. It can be about forgiveness, redemption, learning from one's past or from one's mistakes. It can represent like Resurrection Day or Judgment Day. There may also be a literal sense of judgment. All evidence has been made to the seeker, and the seeker has rendered his or her judgment. It does not end there, however. The judgment that the seeker has made is going to compel an important realization or epiphany in the seeker. It indicates that the judgment is correct and will be an awakening or an epiphany that is spiritually fulfilling. So if you make a decision and you're not sure if it was the right one, this comes up in the upright, that can let you know that you made a good choice and it's gonna bring change for the best, right? It's gonna allow you to experience a rebirth. All right, and then the final card of the major arcana, the World card. I'm kind of shocked we actually got through it. It's 401 though, so I gotta be quick. It's an Earth card ruled by Saturn. This card represents fulfillment, completion, masterpiece, consummation. It can represent fulfillment, completion, or triumph in all undertakings. It's considered one of the best cards in the tarot deck. It represents oneness with your greater calling. It represents a final state of cosmic consciousness, the supreme balance between the good and evil, complete reconciliation of the universal dichotomy and duality. And also it just represents a completion, like a lesson learned, a closed chapter. It represents the command of growth energy, of emotions, ambitions, and material goods. In other words, all 4 elemental suits. I think I skipped one of them. Anyway, it is a card of synthesis. It can indicate that the potential for great triumph and attainment of the highest level of cosmic consciousness is possible. It suggested the seeker's importance in the greater cosmic landscape. So it's very, very good energy. Represents a lesson learned. It can come up for like achievements, graduations, awards, things of that nature. So yeah, these are just some examples of some 3 card spreads that you can use. When practicing, you can separate your cards, your major arcana cards, and just practice doing 3 card spreads, 2 card spreads, 1 card spreads with your deck to get to know it, to to practice and to help yourself familiarize yourself with each card. That way the keywords start to stick. And I would just take notes. Start small, start with 1 card, 2 cards, maybe something like that, so that you slowly remember what each card means. Even if you want to take the card that is associated with your sun sign first, and learn that card. And then learn the card that's associated with your moon sign. Having that personal connection can help the card's meanings stick. Even though for me, like the Devil card was one of the, I'm a Sun Capricorn, I have Capricorn Stellium, and that's the Capricorn card of the Major Arcana. But that was one of the hardest cards. That was the most difficult card, one of the most difficult cards for me to actually understand really well. So just pace yourself. The Major Arcana is probably the most difficult part of the deck. The suits are much, much easier. So whenever I have time again, we'll go over the suits. If we want to go over the Major Arcana again, if y'all have questions, please drop them below and I'll make sure I answer them. But yeah, I hope that was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something. And yeah, you'll have access to this link. So if you want to rewatch it again to catch any keywords that I mentioned, any buzzwords that you want to put in your notebook to have readily available for when you do readings for yourself, or if you want to do readings for other people as well. And if you ever want to practice on somebody, you just want to read a card or two, somebody who you're completely detached from, so that you're not being biased when you read the cards, you can practice on me. Just send me a message and I'm happy to be your guinea pig. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and come right back if you have been reading this book or if you're interested in learning about this book. We're going to talk about it very briefly. I'm going to end this session and then come right back on to talk about how to be a psychic. All right. Peace, y'all.